Just Benny. So here at Midnight Market, failure is not an option. It's just a stepping stone to greatness. And that's what we're going to talk about in this show. So we're very excited. The two of us are launching this under the iShook brand. So we are just so excited to get going here. So in this pilot episode, we're going to learn about my co-host here and his entrepreneur background, especially iShook. Obviously, we got to talk about that because that's the company under which we are producing this podcast. So let's start with this. Can you tell us about your journey as an entrepreneur and how you got started in the world of business? Because I want like a very overarching, like, okay, what was your thoughts going into this? What was your plan? And then we can get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, no doubt. So the reality is, let's go a little bit backwards, right? So if we go backwards, we're here with Kira, our great new host, right, of iShook's show, Midnight Market, which I'm very excited. And I can tell you, it all started. Let's put aside my academic pursuit, but let's go to the business pursuit. So working in a bookstore, being involved in the book industry, in the printing industry, in the publishing industry. We're talking about local scale. We're talking about, local books, local production, local printing, custom printing of books, custom development of books. And that in itself led to what we are now with iShook. Now, were there failures and hurdles throughout? Of course. There were many failures and hurdles throughout. Did we venture into other types of industries? Of course, we did. I went into graphic design, where you actually, as a graphic designer, you do learn from many businesses and how they work, right? Because if you don't learn how they work, how are you going to design their brand? And then I learned from my brand, designer, which is Ben. He's on our iShook.me website. He works for us, and he actually designs all our logos, all our branding. And as we're going by, we're going in dabbling into real estate, dabbling into a little bit other ventures, cryptocurrency, so on and so forth. And we, we are to where we are today. I mean, this is a very vague expression of how I got to become an entrepreneur, right? It's very vague. I just wanted to give you a whole overall 15 years in 2 sentences, as much as I can.
Yeah, you packed a lot in there. And a lot of people in their careers, they're like, all right, I'm going to get some education, get some degrees, then I'm going to go out and find a really great salary job and kind of work up, either stay in that company for a long run, more of like that was the old school way of doing it. And now people kind of jump jobs every couple of years, but they have a salary, right? So it is scary as an entrepreneur. And I've experienced this in the last few years of making the jump from having a salary to being like, I'm an entrepreneur where I could make a boatload of money or I could make $0. So what allowed you to say, okay, I'm going to have businesses take the risks that go with that? I mean, what was your mindset going into that? Because a salary job is stable. I mean, you have a family, like there's a lot of things that you've had to think about over the years just for yourself financially.
So I look at it as 3 ways. You got the 3 major, and I just thought of this now, by the way. I'm going to tell you what I thought of just now. You have the
Off
3,
the cuff.
yeah, the 3 CEOs. You have Jeff Bezos style, you have Elon Musk, and you have Warren Buffett. I believe Warren Buffett was actually working in the what do you call it, industry. When he started the company, he actually Berkshire. He was still working. He had a job or something. He was doing the funding and the investment banking and all that stuff. I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have Elon Musk, who created PayPal, and essentially his creation financed him, and he had other creations before. And then you also have, so one is you have a job that pays you, and you're able to do this side investment hustle, right? The other one is actual company that you created and the startup can pay you, right? And the other one is the Jeff Bezos, is where your wife supports you and you make your money, and then you have Amazon. I mean, those are, I think, the 3 major ways of being an entrepreneur today and making money. So you got those 3. All right, pick one. I'm not telling you which one I'm at. So
I was going to say, I need to know which one you're at.
It's more
or when you started. Yeah.
Well, it's more family and it's more wife, of course. It's more, it's a mix of many different things. But I didn't go to college. I never went to university. I never went to college. I did different pursuits of academics. But I never went to college. were there fights? Oh, if you don't go to college, you don't, you're not going to succeed. And look now, most people are saying, really, college? Do they really give you a trade? Like you got a lot of paper behind you. I always say this: just because you're a master's in a degree doesn't mean you're a master's in life.
That is very true. Yeah. And I think it depends too on what someone wants to do. There are some
Yeah,
careers and paths where you have to have that degree, but then there's others where you're like, you don't necessarily need to. Like for
right.
me, I had to get certain genetic degrees, but I never got any degrees in marketing, entrepreneurship, business, finance, anything like that. But I figured that out along the way. So I feel like I'm a good mix of that. But let's go all the way back to like your first business, because a lot of people that are listening to this are going to kind of be in that spot where they're like, all right, I'm, the model that you talked about where working full time, maybe that was Warren Buffett, and then also kind of starting a business. And like once it kind of starts taking off enough, you can then, leave that full time job. But for you, what was that first business? What was the idea? What went into starting that? Because that, I would imagine, became the basis for what really developed in terms of like your career as a serial entrepreneur.
Excuse me. Yeah. So my whole first business was printing, digital
Okay,
printing.
so it was all digital printing.
Yeah. But I
And what
started.
year was this? Or is that an unknown?
No, that's the year 2009, 10, about. So my
Okay.
first business was my first business was maybe earlier, actually. No, around that time. I mean, I don't
Okay.
remember exactly, but to be fair, it's around that time. But again, my first business in printing, digital printing, I might have made a mistake getting into it. But the reason why I wanted to get into digital printing was because I started my own magazine in the community locally. And I said, why pay printers $3 a magazine, hustle harder for the ads when I can buy my own machine, print it at my own time, and distribute at my time, and I can do sales of printing of others, right? Now, when you start your first business, I'll give you, especially in printing, well, digital printing is not as big anymore as it was. That's for sure. That's already a dead business right now. But the digital press printing is still good if you have it, if you're able to make it and succeed with it, go for it. I mean, but you have to have a lot of accounts off the bat. Best buy business already existing in digital printing. So what ends up happening is with the digital machines, the best advice I can give everyone is don't do favors for anyone when you do digital machine printing. Because that's what I did. I did favors and I did for nonprofits. Not that you shouldn't do for nonprofit, but you should help nonprofits after you actually make profit, not as initial base and you're giving them low cost and you're actually losing money. And don't forget about it. And then the machine didn't either work because these were machines that were huge machines. It was a $50,000 machine. Yeah. So, and it was a saddle stitch printer and it was a face cutter and it didn't go as fast as I wanted it to go. I mean, I was up literally all night, hence midnight market. I was up
Yes.
to 3, 4,
Origin
5 in the
story right
morning.
there.
Yeah, to 3, 4, 5 in the morning for these 200 copies, 1,000 copies to be popping out. And that's not really it wasn't thought out 100%. And the business did fail. It failed and it didn't fail. It failed financially, but it didn't fail because through that machine, I was able to do a lot of other stuff with proposals and ideas. Like I didn't have to go to a printer anymore. My printer was right in front of me. Put it that way.
And I think you say a good aspect there of like, yeah, it failed in some circumstances, but not all. And I think especially when we're early on in our journey with entrepreneurship, like our first business may likely fail or an aspect of the business or something, but that's where we really learn a lot. Are there things that you took from that experience that you brought into your next business to be like, you just mentioned, like, don't take on charity work before you're making money, because then that's not going to lead to long-term sustainability where you can then do even more charity.
Right. So that's for sure. Don't do charity work before because you have to first build yourself before you can give people your money, right? Like you got to build yourself. You got to be financially set before you can actually give. And honestly, I was already doing some sort of giving already besides my printing, which I should have never, added more to my plate. What I would suggest is and realistically speaking, what I would suggest is that every single person who does an entrepreneurship work, he's got to understand, or she's got to understand, or they must understand, whatever. it must be understood, right, that every single project you do, you're 20 to 80. 20% you might win it, 80% you will fail. I mean, and you got to really know what is your failures. And these are unknowns, because if you're starting every new business that's being started, there's no rule book how to start a new business. It's a new business. Hence new rules, new accommodations, new verticals, new horizons, new futures. Like everything is new. Like, and the greatest example is right now Bitcoin and AI. Bitcoin 10 years back, about 14 years back, and then AI now. Like, it's new. Where does it kind of come from? Yeah, AI will be the next blockchain sensation. New, and we have the same thing with the .com, and then the internet, and then social media. Like, we're in the past 30 years, we've been like booming. Besides, I'm just talking software. We're not even talking about hardware, right? In the tech world. And that's even in the innovations in medical science and holistic science. Yeah, all these things are changing, right? But you think any of those things happen without massive failures? Of course, massive failures. You had the .com crash. You had many crashes in many of these industries for it to come. You have a Bitcoin crash in 2018. Yeah, you had many crashes. You have people all doubling down against it, and it survived after being beaten like Rocky. Even the Mother Russia couldn't take it down.
Yeah,
What I
it
mean?
definitely, it's like we learn as we go. And sometimes like you got to know, like a lot of times staying in for the long haul can be really advantageous. Like you look at the stock market or something, right? Like that will do, if you put money in 50 years later, I can't imagine a world where you're not making a profit from that, right? In terms of, those stocks being worth more. So there's certain things it's like,
unless you put stocks in like a Blockbuster. Then.
Right. Sorry. I meant like S&P 500, just like, yeah. But so I think it's kind of, knowing when to stick in for the long haul for it. So what about on the flip side in terms of notable successes that you've had? We've talked about some of the challenges and things that you experienced. Okay, that was a bit of a failure. But what about like your early on? Like, do you think about what that like first success looked like for you and what went behind that?
Well, if you look at financial success, not necessarily a financial gain is a success. I know many companies that have financial gains, but their company is a failure. For example, I'm going to drop it down. We have one company called New Chip, right? New Chip was a company that taught people how to, pitch their business, how to formulate their business. Everything in theory and in education and academia that they had was to the T, to the top, right? But for you to teach me how to do financing, and in turn you have no financing, right? Like you failed in financing, they went bankrupt. So I mean, like, how are you teaching us how to be a New Chip when you yourself are a failure? And I know how they failed. It's very simple. The way they failed because they focused more on the fundraising than the actual business itself. Like they should have really focused on the business and making this business successful, because New Chip could have been the next start engine, right? But they didn't do that. They should have went to that. They never did. And I think that's the failure. I mean, they had money, but the failure as a company is a failure. So, and then you have FTX failure, right? And then with Sam, whatever his name, what do they call him? Sam? What is this? SBD, right? They call him SPD or SF, whatever. Yeah, Sam Bankman, SBF, that's his name. Yeah. SBF.
Yes.
It's like effing SOB, right? It's
a little different.
Yeah,
a little different.
A little bit different, right? So like this guy messed everything up. And then I have this other company, which in LinkedIn I put a post on, and everybody should be very weary of this company. I don't care if I say it, because this company is a Ponzi scheme. It's a scam. And anyone who really wants to get marketing, they can come through us, through our podcast, and they'll get good deals, good conversions. We'll do interviews for minimum amount. And it's called Madwire Marketing 360. We did initially use them in the beginning of their stages. We're talking about 10 years back in 2014, 15. They were good. They did what we asked them to do. They were very hustling. They were very, but then it became like a Ponzi scheme. It became like one person managing 10 people, and they have this data platform of a website that you have to be stuck with them, and then they have this whole shtick that, like, for us, they never made a website. We didn't need a website. We had websites. I have platforms. I needed just marketing. And they took $8,000. $8,000. You know,
And
like
what did you get for that $8,000?
nothing. Bupkis, bupkis, bupkis. We didn't have a website. We didn't have nothing. I said, give us back the money. We weren't able to get the money. And then we used this virtual financing banking system. I'm not gonna, hate on them, but like, how can you do a chargeback and all your people are in Estonia? Like, how can I talk to them? Like, where's the chargeback? They have no clue how to do a chargeback. Right? It was a disaster, and the whole experience was a disaster. And we had many disasters like this. So New Chip was 8,000, 10,000. Mad Wire was another 10,000, right? Like, all these companies cost money. You're thinking that you're getting your cut, your money's worth, and you're not getting your money's worth. Now, we did lose in other ways where Apple changes their system, right? Right. We were using a company called Tapjoy. Tapjoy you were able to get like 30, 40,000 users on iShook.com through our ebook platform. And we had over hundreds of thousands of downloads. And what ended up happening, Tapjoy was basically connecting to users when they're playing video games. Our ads would pop up, download our app. What ends up happening, Tapjoy, Apple creates a new rule. And this is where I say people have to be adaptive.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're creating tech, you got to be so adaptive. Apple says, that's it. We're not letting you share. We're not letting you share. We're not sharing information of individuals anymore. So then we lose the game of advertisement. They change the whole ad market. And then
you got to pivot because you're like, we can't do that anymore. How are we going to keep getting new people in?
Right. So Tapjoy had to pivot. And then we said, okay, if you got to pivot, we're not paying you. Like, we're not paying you. Like, you have to pivot. You should have prepared yourselves for such an event and not throw it back at your customer. I mean, like, you got to prepare for that.
And I think that raises kind of 2 points. You said adaptability and learning what's new. I think especially if you're a company in the tech space or another space that is just rapidly changing, because you got to stay on top of what's happening now, but also what's coming down the pipeline. I think, you mentioned AI, like that's something that is massive, right? I would say the past year and a half has really changed how so much works now, just people's workflow, how they're able to cut a lot of, the legwork out of things. And then the other thing that you kind of highlighted was just sometimes you end up working with a company and you're like, okay, this is not what I thought it would be. Do you have advice in terms of what to look for in companies to see that they're legit, they're going to be delivering what they're saying they're going to? Are there certain red flags or green flags that people should be paying attention to in those first initial meetings when you're feeling each other out and seeing if it's going to be a partnership?
Well, it goes by reputation. That's for sure. Reputation of the company. It also goes by, I would like to meet heads of the company. Like, from now on. Like, as a CEO, you got to respect me and talk to me as a CEO. Like, if you're going to send me your rep to talk to a CEO, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to deal with your company. Because if you're a startup, and I'm not talking about if you're Jeff Bezos and you're an Amazon, right? Because Amazon is not going to ruin their reputation for Benny, right? They're not going to do that, right? They're gonna if it's going to be a deal, you gotta be coming to them because they're a huge resource. They're an arm, right? Or Elon Musk comes to you, you jump and you go and you sit with Elon Musk and do whatever not whatever he wants, but obviously he's a good guy. You're going to do whatever meeting he'll want to have with you if he calls up on you. But if you're going to a new chip company or any of these mad wire companies, listen, you better sit with me on a call, the CEO. I want to know how you operate. I mean, you want to get from me money for the rest of, like, for a long-term relationship, you better show me the details. And again, the other thing is one thing you always have to look for in a resource. If you are using a resource, are you able to opt out from that resource without any losses? So if, let's say, I hire a company, whatever I'm going to get from this company, will I be able to get a resource? Basically, would I be able to keep the resource for this company? Would I be at a loss, or is it still going to be around for me?
So something where if you're working for a company and that relationship doesn't work out, you're still keeping whatever was produced during that time. Am I getting that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So again, if let's say I have a resource, I'm building, I don't know, AI tech. Do I keep the codes? Like there's a known fact.
Ah,
There's a known factor in the industry in what's it called in the blockchain industry, right? Not blockchain, graphic design industry.
sure.
That I, even though I create a graphic for you and I charged you, I don't have to give you my open source files. What took me to create it, right? Those are my open source files. If you want to purchase my open source files, you got to pay me a higher premium or a higher rate for those open source files. So I didn't know that that's the rule. And what do? Whenever I hit any graphic designer, I say, listen, if I'm paying you, I want the open source file. I
Mm,
want to be able to open an Illustrator and Photoshop or an InDesign and actually use and work off that product, right?
right.
So that's but it's we have to understand there's an industry custom or a standard. Then in the graphic design industry, they don't have to give you the open source file. You have to request it in your agreement. But nevertheless, I want an open source file, right? That's what I want. So in reality is what we are saying is that in everything as an entrepreneur, make sure you get your files. Make sure
So
you
kind
get
of
your
like the project files almost. So like I know my partner's a graphic designer on the side, and so yeah, it's not necessarily explicit. Oh, do they get that draft where they can go back and edit if they no longer work with her in the future, kind of thing. So I think that's helpful. Like I think that's something that need to ask about. And from my perspective, different things that I do, I certainly offer that. I'm like, yeah,
well,
here you go. I'm
too
not trying
many
to gatekeep.
No doubt, no doubt. But too many businesses have been in a flux where they have a business card and they can't reuse that business card. So what ends up happening, they have to come to me and I gotta now waste my time to recreate a business card, which should have
Mhm.
taken me. That's why, by the way, another failure I had in the industry with printing. Like people will come to me for a $25 business card print. I make $10. I printed 1, 2, 3, but they say no, recreate my business card. I'm like, oh my god, this is
Yeah,
disastrous.
like that's totally different. You got to put so much more time into it. I love hearing about all the failures because I feel like that's how we grow and learn. And then hearing from other people's failures is awesome because we can learn from them without having the repercussions of that failure ourselves. So I think that's just like so important. And I think another thing I wanted to ask you about is fast forwarding, because we talked about kind of your origin story a little bit, starting that first business and when was it time to start the second business. So we've covered that. Now, fast forward about 15 years later to today, you now run multiple businesses. So, what advice would you give people that are a little bit further along in their journey where they have a really successful, however that looks like for them, business, and they're like, maybe I should start other businesses? When did you find it was the right time to do that? Or was it kind of the opportunity presented itself and you're like, I'm doing it?
Right. So running multiple businesses is not an advice I would give anybody.
Ah, interesting. I didn't think you'd
Yes.
say that.
Yeah, I would say that personally. I don't think people are capable of not everybody's capable of running multiple businesses. Um, it's not easy. It's pretty hard. I'm being straight up. It's hard. You got to be very devoted. You got to be
Yeah.
able to. You got to be willing to sacrifice pleasure and desire and having fun, right? Like that's the sacrifice. Like
Mhm.
you have to be able to be willing to do that. Sleepless nights. I know that Gary Vee says, "No, you have to sleep good." Everybody's saying sleeping good. Listen, you want to make it financially. I don't know how by you sleeping and not utilizing that youth that you have to its maximum to get to where you want to get to, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, when are you going to get to where you're going to get to? You It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger said one time when he was pumping iron, right? Like, I'm pumping iron now, and he said when he was younger and he was pumping iron, he never slept, he never stopped. Why? Because when he takes a break, his competition does not take a break.
Mm.
Then that means they get ahead of you when it comes to bodybuilding and all that. And bodybuilding is important, right? You need that bodybuilding, structure and in his field. So it's all about time. You don't have all the time in the world that you can take a break because your competition is going ahead of you. Now, what a person should always do is figure out what business they have or what entrepreneurial idea they have that will have the least competition as possible, right?
Totally agree. Yeah, find your niche.
Right. So the niche is when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be intelligent enough. So that's why I said many people have masters, they have it on paper, but the intelligence is just not there. Like they have a master's on a certain field, but they're the elevator, like, in their mind, doesn't go up to the certain, level in the floor, and therefore they're not able to, conform with it. So that's the major issue that we have here. That's the major issue. So in reality is, you got to be careful in what you're doing, in the sense of, like, you got to be very adaptive, again, like we said before, and also predictive in what could happen, what you need.
And I think even within, if someone has a successful business, also looking at what areas that business can expand instead of just creating a whole nother business. That I've done that myself, of figuring out, okay, this is my main service product, but then, okay, well, how else can I reach and offer something to my community and my target audience, and all of that. So I think there's value in that too, because it's, I would imagine, easier to expand a business rather than create a whole new business, and all the branding behind that, building up a customer base. Like, there's so much work that goes into that initial part. And that makes sense. Kind of, I agree with you that when you're starting a business, you do have to devote a lot of time and energy to that. And hopefully it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I can now manage things a little bit better. And when there's more revenue coming in, saying, well, now I can hire some people to do tasks that I don't necessarily need to be doing every nitty-gritty part of a task, and just more overseeing. And I'm sure you've kind of experienced that too, because you've hired a lot of people.
Right. But then also there's another factor point. No one's going to do the work as best as you will do the work, right?
Right.
Right. So no one's going to do it. And then you also have to take in consideration training someone to do, like, I would have to train something. And this is what I learned in typography, right? You're using InDesign, like my forte. It's my cup of tea. And then for me to teach someone to use InDesign the way I use InDesign, with certain, techniques that I use for, pagination, for specialty books, like, for me to teach someone to do that, I would have to now burn weeks at a time to teach that person.
Right.
And then on top of that, I have to follow through with them and pay that person, when I could have just done it myself in the 2-3 weeks, and just, just formulate my time and done it myself. Like, eventually I would have to teach someone to do it, because I cannot be always hands-on on doing it. But
Right.
the point is, do I do it now when I don't have the money per se for that person at this moment, or do I wait for later? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait for that. What do I do? Like, you have to know what to do, when to do it, and that's also a learning curve. You don't know when you should be doing what you should be doing, at what time you should be doing it, what moves you should be making. There's no way to really know till you do it.
Right. Yeah. Of just figuring it out, and also tasks that you enjoy doing, keep doing that. But
Right.
things that you don't like doing, or you realize you're not very good at certain tasks, that to me is an opportunity to say, let me hire someone that's going to do a better job at this than I am. And it's something off my plate, and I don't want to do it anyway. So I think that's what I've kind of been focused on the last year, of like, all right, if there's aspects I don't like that the business needs to have done, all right, how can I hire someone internally to be able to do that, and oversee it, right? So it's a little bit different in that sense. But so we've talked about a lot of like your background and everything, but present day, tell us about iShook. I mean, what's the premise? How does it offer something new in the social and digital space?
Well, the reality of iShook is to get reality into social space, right? Right. That's the idea, where we're creating real factual citation and information, and digestion of content in its proper way, and that's very important. Like, we need to have that ability, where we're using communication and because today, what I look at social media is a form of communication. It's not
Certainly.
necessarily social anymore. It's just a technological way of communicating, by posting posts, posting videos, and now communicating via the content that you have. But what's lacking in an industry is communication via actual data, right? Like, where's the data? Where's the information? So if you go to iShook.com and you create an account, you can actually share PDFs. You can share, content of academia, and then, let that become the structure of our discussion, as opposed to literally just videos of 30 seconds, and just, and just, posts. I mean, it's not enough. And then we also incorporate chat GPT into our social media. So that in itself, if you think about it, it's like that's what's important, because with that ability, not everybody, like, listen, not every, I'm pretty sure out of all the people typing and posting, not everybody passed English, at a 98 plus level, right? 98.5, whatever, 98 plus level. Like not everybody is in able to write and formulate properly. So we put ChatGPT AI to help you write what you want. Write what you want it to say and let it help you write it, right? And then review it if you want to change the verbiage. But giving a person a chance to, to kind of get help to formulate their writing, because they're not going to be able to ask their friend, "Oh, can you help me write this the right way?" and not to get backlash from it. Use ChatGPT to help you formulate it. Why not? Like
even if you
that,
are a good writer, it makes it happen so much faster because it's giving you ideas, it's giving you different phrases, and then you can just edit. Editing is so much faster than like starting to write out. So
that
I mean,
is
I love it for that too. I'd like to
right.
think
That is,
I'm a decent writer, but it
but
makes it happen so fast.
you also have to think in how people are going to receive what you're doing. Like I don't know if you heard the whole debacle with Rabbi Shmuley, right, Botesh,
No.
and how he how he misread the room in regards to his posting, right? So he messed he messed himself PR wise, right? And what he should have done is literally don't mix your personal house, right, with anything that you're doing as a speaker or a pundit or a guest in all these shows like Piers Morgan and other shows. I think that was his biggest failure. He mistranslated and he misread the room and how people would read him, because he wasn't showing himself to be read properly. Like people are not going to understand you the way you think they're going to understand you. Like you're 57
Right.
years old. There's for sure a disconnect with social media and millennials, and also how social media and how people. So that's another thing. When you're posting something, how will people perceive it? Reality is you never know how someone's going to perceive it. Literally never. Never will know. So whatever you're going to post, whatever you're going to do, but a video for sure will be mistranslated, because depending on how you present a video, you're going to be off the wall. So I take it very conservatively. I just say things that are normal, not controversial, and then you're good to go. That's how I look at it. So
know that how is it going to sound if it's taken out of context, right? We see this a lot in politics where one sentence is taken, played on the news, and we're like, oh my gosh, this politician said this, that. And it's like, all right, well, let's hear the whole paragraph, because sometimes that's where the disconnect is. But keeping that in mind when you are talking and everything. So I understand now the presence or the premise of iShook and where you're coming from. Let's get into a little bit of how you decided what you were going to offer under the iShook network, because there's so many aspects to it, right? One of them is now the podcasting aspect, which obviously is what I'm most excited about. Shocker, right? But I mean, you also mentioned ebooks and then being able to like use, as you said, like ChatGPT integrated to be able to write. So what else can people use iShook for?
Well, so let's start how we started as an iShook company. iShook started as an ebook platform where I personally saw a massive disconnect between ebooks and social media. Like ebooks was the next thing, right? It is the next thing, right?
Yeah.
Digital, where I can have not every book I want as a copy. So some books I will want to have a copy in my house, a hard copy, and some books I want just to be in my iPhone or in my iPad. So wherever I go, I have that book with me. A travel kind of companion. And again, I would travel with some hard copy books as well, depending again on the title and the product. All right. So what ends up happening is when you go on social media like Twitter, X, and then you go to Facebook, when you post that you have this new book happening, by the time you're able to discover that book, oh wow, that's an interesting what pops up in my feed, I lose it later, right? So maybe I repost it or I save it. They have the save feature on Instagram and all that, but that still doesn't give me the guarantee that I'm going to go purchase it tomorrow. Even till today, it doesn't have it the way we have on our platform, where you have an ebook, you can share it on our social media platform, and then you can just press the heart button and it wish lists it automatically on our ebook platform.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we had that feature in our natively created social media platform, iShook.com. But then we changed it, and now we have to add back that component into our platform. So that's going to be done within a couple of months coming, right? So that's for sure going to happen. Now, today, where we at iShook.com and podcasting is, if you hear the whole debacle with TikTok, right, potentially being banned, we have a new platform called ClickTalk, which is just now available on iOS, literally last week. So we're announcing it here.
Wow.
Yeah. Daniel Baldwin, our partner in our company, had announced it months ago that it's on the way. He dropped a little bit in his podcast, but ClickTalk is available now. The idea is that what's happening with TikTok itself is becoming more like YouTube. If you think about it, they're not really becoming Instagram. They're trying to compete with a YouTube, following. So I said, you know what? Let's create a YouTube /Rumble/TikTok kind of platform. And dude, we're calling it ClickTalk with a Q, CILIQ, Talk TOK. So I suggest everybody to go to ClickTalk, which is powered by iShook.tv, create your own account, all right, and start, because we're gonna create a program where we're giving the largest monetization to influencers than any other platform. We will beat the price of any other platform.
That's very exciting. Yeah, very exciting for creators, because that's something that can be very tough. The CPM, the cost per milli or thousand, is quite low, I would say, especially like on those types of platforms. So that's really exciting.
And we want to have initially, obviously, the eligibility of those who come in, how many users they're going to bring with them, and then we're going to create a partnership with the initial, let's say, 1,000. Well, we're going to create a fair deal, but I don't want to disclose the deal in this show. Maybe we'll do it in the next show. I mean, I want to finalize it. But ClickTalk is there, and what's good about ClickTalk is like what Rumble does. You go to Rumble, you can import your YouTube videos. ClickTalk, you can do the same thing. You can also upload the videos. I mean, it's all there, and we're going to have features eventually in a couple of months, just like TikTok and Instagram and the filters and all the beautiful things that everybody wants, right? So we're gonna have those features as well, and the idea is that we're trying to make it less algorithm based, right? We want it more organic. Yeah, we want it organic, and why not opt out of an algorithm? Like you should be able to opt out. I don't want to be in an algorithm. Don't put me in an algorithm. Like I want to be myself, and but you have to give something, like, because how else are we gonna cater to your needs? I mean, sometimes it's good to have.
It has to go off something, and it's US based, so it's not going to be banned.
Oh yeah,
at least not for those reasons, right? That the issues we see with TikTok
why would they ban us? I mean, like, why would they?
Right. So it's
I'm a good guy. I'm gonna do anything.
Yeah. Good to invest in a platform that has potential and all of that. And I mean, there's so many aspects, especially of iShook, that it's very innovative. You're using a lot of your creative juices to be able to come up with this. Where does that come from? I mean, what is your approach when you're like, okay, I want to have a new facet of iShook? How are you able to figure out, all right, this is something that's interesting versus this is something that is like, oh, this is going to take off. This is worth investing our time and money in.
Well, the thing is, in an honest perspective, realistically speaking, everything that a person does, you have to really do it with faith, right? You have to be faithful to what you're doing, and it's also catch-22, right? A lot of the things that we've been doing have actually gotten into, they've formulated to where they are. I mean, they've become a success story literally by just doing it, and let time and God like make it happen. Like all of a sudden, oh, we did this. We weren't ready for that years ago, but now we're ready. And we put all this time and effort, and then boom, everything that we've done, we're literally ready to go now at a 100x scale, right? And that in itself is a big, I think, a big thing that we do. So you can never, I guess, prophesize or depict what you will be at where you will be, right? But sometimes, by just doing things, it comes by itself. That's why I say to people, whatever project you're going to do, become adaptive. Learn to be adaptive. I know it's very vague to say learn to be adaptive, but you need to know your industry. If you're getting into an industry, you need to know how to be adaptive in the industry, right? Like what I love about the farming industry, many people in the farming industry, what are they doing? They're taking farming in a new level, right? When it comes to hydroponics, when it comes to automated machinery, like these are innovations. This is becoming adaptive to time, right?
Right.
As opposed to not being adaptive to time and just letting it, letting things just pass by you, and you're still sticking to the old, But again, a lot of people can't adapt because of financial, right? So a lot of these farmers will not be able to adapt financially. And the biggest question is why Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos in China are buying up all the land. If you watch Dr. Phil's show, Dr. Phil is really pushing out there where China has bought so much land near military bases, and that's in itself a thing that needs to be discussed. That's something very scary. So that's a side point.
Wow, I don't know too much of that. We'll have to talk
that should be a
sidebar
topic.
on that at some point.
Yeah, that should be a topic because that has a lot to do with financing. Why are these
Interesting.
big oligarchs and China? What the hell? Why in the world are they buying so much farmland of the U.S.? Doesn't make sense.
And you bring up a good point with just know your industry and everything happening there. That seems like common sense, right? But then I think your point of know things that are adjacent to your industry that could impact your industry, because that's going to be a big part. So I think kind of knowing, all right, that also kind of helps you be adaptable in terms of what is happening maybe in the future, looking at how other facets and other areas are impacting a certain industry. Like that, right?
So what I mean by know your industry doesn't mean that you don't learn to know other things, right? Because you don't know what a real estate market in China crash can do with your crypto crash in America, or vice versa. I'm giving like far left field. Things are not related at all. But for some reason, they could be related because those people who are in the finance industry over there, in the real estate industry, are heavy crypto traders or heavy crypto investors. And if their cash flow of income of real estate falls apart, then the cash flow of cryptocurrency could fall. Who knows? I mean, we don't know what is really connected because really no one really has that data, like how these things are linked to each other, right? And I say to everybody, you have to learn about everything. Know your space. Learn about everything. It's very important.
Be exposed to as much as you can. Just absorb it.
As much as information as possible. But you know your space. The key word is know. Knowing your space, like biblical knowing. Know your space, right? Then just learn about everything else. Learning is not knowing. It's just learning. That means you're constantly learning, constantly digesting.
Right. There's not an end point. Like as humans, we're always learning and putting ourselves into positions and places where that is going to happen. And a lot of that for me is kind of learning through other people and networking and building relationships. To me, this has been the most important aspect of my business, is being able to network and not just meet a bunch of people, but really be developing long-term relationships. For me, especially with sponsors of my show. How has this played a role in terms of building up your businesses? I mean, how do you leverage this for your career and how one relationship will bleed into the next? And can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, relationships with people are very difficult because you're dealing with money and then you're dealing with personalities, right? There's no such thing, and I tell this to everybody, that you're going to be 100% with everybody. There's no such thing. And most people are not going to understand where you're coming from. They're going to understand the bottom line is the dollar that they want, right? That's what everybody wants. They want their dollar, right? But when you're working with me, the dollar is crucial because you got to get paid, obviously, right? But I want you to deliver something for the dollar. What have you delivered for my dollar? Like, you're getting $1, that's the bartering system. Here's the money. What am I gaining for the dollar I gave you? Because I don't have to give this to you. I can find someone else to give it to. So that in itself is an important factor when you're doing and you're having relationships with peoples, right? And peoples don't get that. Like, you're taking the money from people now. It's going to be limited if you're, kind of sucking from the people the money and just not delivering deliverables on the money that you've taken, right? So relationships are very important. And the reality is if you want to have a true relationship, you have to be very open on the fact that if you're going to have a true relationship, you got to be open to the fact that relationships are not necessarily always about money now. They could be about money for tomorrow. Like, the money that you can make tomorrow could be much more than the money now. So why are you going to burn the bridges on the money now? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing that I personally have an issue with a few peoples on that issue, like a few types of peoples, not in general, but We hired in iShook over 300 people in the past 10 years, since 2013. So in the past 11 years, we've hired over 200, at least developers, actors, actresses. We've done it all. I mean, we've done it all. And we have relationships with people. I have a relationship with a person for 3-4 years, non-financial. And we have a project that we're working on, which we're going to announce hopefully very soon. And that project is a huge project for us, you know, and we're working together. We've done podcasts together. I mean, he's part of our company. His name is Jared. Like, I have a relationship for 3 years. I've known him since COVID, only virtually, never met him. And I have a very good relationship with him. And he's very cool, and I'm cool with him, and we're very cordial with each other. And, you know, of course, relationships are important, because with these type of relationships, that's how you make the future happen. Like, there's no way you're going to do it by yourself. No way.
No,
it's impossible.
No. It's so important. I mean, as someone that has hired over 200 people, what do you look for in that initial conversation, interview, to be like, all right, I feel like this person is a match for me working with them. I see that they're going to be a trusted individual. They're going to do high quality work. What do you look for in those conversations for other entrepreneurs that are maybe beginning to hire people?
Yeah, so I can tell you one thing. Our first company that we met was in a show. Was in a digital book world show. We met a company. I'm not going to mention the company's name because I like the company. They're a good company. And they had an in-house developer. I'm not going to mention from what country is in. It's not relevant. But I was so frustrated with him. And it was frustrating. They put me on boot camp. This is a website called Boot Camp, I think. And you're basically able to follow through all the resources. Literally, we spent $87,000 to create and match natively an ebook platform. Like, we created our own ebook platform from scratch.
Wow.
And it was working exactly like Kobo, Overdrive, iBooks, which is Books Now, and all these companies. And we had it all we have it all integrated to social media. Right now, it's being updated, by the way, so it's going to be coming up soon. The update for iShook ebook platform. And then we spent $86,000. Of course, we spent more money as the years go by, but it took us a year. Like, I didn't have an ebook platform for a year. We had a skeleton for a big show, but then as an ebook platform, I didn't have it for a year. I'm like, why is it taking so long to make an ebook platform? It's ridiculous. And I'm on the conversation. I'm like, why? And it's like I'm like, can we figure out how to make this ebook work? I mean, like, the book has to flip, the book has to open,
right?
Like what's going on here? Like, and it took a long time with this specific individual. And I think it was this specific individual who was not able to communicate with me properly. And then and I had many conversations about this, many complaints about this. And then eventually this person left that company. He went to India. He started a IT company. He called me up, and I just gave him away. He's from India. So he called me up, and he couldn't work with me because there was a language barrier. Personality wise, there was a language barrier, and not a language barrier, just he couldn't.
You didn't communicate in the same way?
No, I think it's more than that.
Okay.
I think when you're dealing with people in the industry or in any industry, if you are oversensitive or hypersensitive, you can't work with business people. Don't expect a person in the business industry to be sensitive to you. I mean, it's not about being sensitive. We're not here in a football game or in a corporate retreat. This is not what it is here. It's pro forma. I need a job done to make my money, to feed my family and my families of all those who are around me, right? Because I'm responsible to them. You need to perform. And if you're not performing, you're losing for me. So you're making me lose. And we're talking about financial loss. So the reality is you need to start, either conforming with what I want, or say, listen, you can't do it. And I have no problem. I go find the next person to do it.
Right.
So it's not so complicated. It's about whether you have the ability to conform. And I think that's the biggest problem that people have. They're hypersensitive, their inability to conform. And that's the number one thing that prevents any project from happening. We can't deal with drama in business. Business has no drama. The dollar, the Benjamins, even though my name is Benjamin, the Benjamins cannot retain drama, because if you have drama with dollars and cents, you are going to lose money. That's the bottom line.
Time is money, and drama takes up a lot of time.
Of course, time is money. And I always tell people, money is never the problem. It's the time.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the limiting factor for everybody. Nobody can create more time at this point, right? I mean,
now you know why America, that's, by the way, why America is always cashing out on their debts, right? Because who are they taking the money out? They just cashing out futures of labor from the people of the United States. So they're coming to the people of the United States like a credit card machine and say, okay, we're swiping for the next 10, 20 years, 20, 30 trillion dollars. When Americans are going to be making in 10 years, $200 trillion, right? $500 trillion, right? So it's really essentially all our money. They're just coming, okay, we're going to swipe. Let's take this Black American Express government card, and we're going to swipe 10 trillion, 8 trillion, 20 trillion. Essentially, it's all our money that we're going to be making the next 20, 30 years. So that's really what it is. I mean, how else are they doing it? They're doing the futures of the labor force of the U.S. They're cashing out on it. So that's the reality. That's the reality of what's happening. So the same thing here. I mean, time is money. You cannot be wasting my time with your drama. So being hypersensitive, and that's why I tell everybody, if you're going to be hypersensitive, right, you're going to lose. Now, what is it our job as executives? It's our job to be patient with the performer, which I am. Sure. I try to be patient with the performer, but 6 months to 8 months to develop one product is a problem.
Right. It's like you need to be able to meet launch deadlines, and there's always so many pieces moving when you're developing a product or service, because you're like, all right, we have this launch date in mind. It may not be public yet, but it's like you need the marketing around that. All right, when that's launched, do we have all of our social and website and all of that? Like there's so much. So when one aspect gets delayed, it's like you're spending so much time updating the rest. And so, that can be very challenging. And I think a lot of this that you've shared, you've learned from experience, from your successes, from your failures. Are there other ways that you've learned a lot in terms of through podcasts, books? I know obviously having the ebook platform, you must be a reader. Are there things that you recommend for people to consume themselves to be able to learn in those formats?
Well, first, the first thing of everything, a person has to learn to consume books and audio that teach you how to comprehend. I think the number one factor in today's society, in a successful society, or a successful entrepreneur, or a successful parent, a successful child, right, is comprehension. If you have the lack of comprehension or the ability to learn to comprehend, you have lost the game of life. That's the bottom line. That's what I say, because comprehension is very crucial. Like every son and daughter has to comprehend. And again, no book is going to teach you that, but some books are going to teach you, basics of comprehension. Some skill. You need to start somewhere. If you don't have it, you got to start somewhere. Like learning to understand your parent is a skill of comprehension, or a parent learning to understand his child or their child. Like a parent not disciplining a child, you don't comprehend your child, because children are not here to be free. They don't have ability to make decisions. It's your obligation to direct them in making decisions, right? To show them how to make a decision. So comprehension is important, because comprehension will define every individual to understand the consequences of their action. Without comprehension, no one will ever understand the consequence of their actions. And once you know that, once you have those skills, then you have to always start learning from everybody as much as you can. Learning does not mean you adopt their system. It just means you have them in the back burner. Because honestly, I tell this to everybody, your experience, Kira, is not necessarily going to help me in my experience in this world. But it could one day, which you never know. But so you put in the back burner. Oh, Kira went through this situation. It seems similar. Let me do what she did in this situation. You know what I mean? Like those are but doesn't mean every experience you've experienced will be an experience that I would need for my own experience in life. right? Or
And you
my
can
experience.
cherry pick. You can be like, oh, I like what this person is sharing, and I'm going to take this, but I disagree with other things they're saying. Like, I think
Well, I
that,
don't know. I don't know if you should do that, and I'll tell you
yeah,
why. Because I'll tell you. Okay, let me ask you a question. All right. If let's say you're a contractor, right? Are you going to dismiss every type of tool to build your house?
no,
You're not going to say I like this hammer over the other hammer. You're going to
right.
say let me have both hammers here,
Hmm.
and let's see which one I would need when I need it.
Just have it in
Right?
the, as you said, kind of the back burner
Yeah.
of, all right, I'm exposed to this,
Right.
but
The
yeah,
only time what you're saying works is when it comes to ideology. Ideology is a way of life. It's a direction in life. In ideology, I don't have to adopt your ideology over my ideology. I can
hmm,
listen to your ideology and then cherry pick whatever suits my way of life. That's fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about realistic life experiences. Like you went to the airport, you got detained, and you said A, B, C to get out of being detained. As opposed to me, I'm going to be detained. I'm going to start cursing the guys. No, 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 no. You got to do Kira style, where you
right,
calm, relax, express yourself properly. Make sure you're giving the right, information. Make sure you're being respectful. These are two different animals of discussion, two different genres, two different categories of discussion. We're talking
mhm,
about skill sets. We're talking about experience and skill sets. We're not talking about ideology or religion right now. We're talking about on those factors. Ideology, religion is how you grew up, how you were born. What works for you, go for it. You know what I mean? As long as it's not, Satanists, right? Like that's
right,
crazy.
yes,
Satanists and all the nonsense that people are doing. I don't know what they're doing. I think people have lost their mind when they're doing that stuff. But I mean, like if it's religion, whether it's an ideology, whether it's a mindset, whether it's a lifestyle, do you like that's you, do you? No
right,
one's stopping it, right? And if you have a special design of a cover of a couch or then yeah, I'll adopt that design. Okay, well, where did you buy this? Like things like that.
right,
That's not what we're talking about, obviously. But for sure, you should always learn. Learning, you lose nothing. Learn, learn, learn. Digest information as much as possible and holistically, not snippets. Your TikTok is not your form of research. That's the
it's
reality.
a little tool in your tool belt, but it shouldn't be the main one.
It's,
Yeah,
it's just a social media tool. It's not a research tool. That's what we want with iShook to be a research tool and a social media tool, and we want to have that combined together. And that's where iShook really, really is coming about. Like that's
yeah,
iShook.com purpose. We're doing all these podcasts in order to deliver the message on a one-stop shop, where we can, give better CRMs, basically conversion rates per minute and conversion rates in general for advertisers, where they actually see a podcast, they come on a podcast, besides the fact that we give them, social media, advertisements throughout all our platforms.
yeah, and I think that also it's so different to have long form media because you can explore so much more, right? We've been chatting for an hour and we've covered so many different facets of entrepreneurship. So, I mean, as we wrap up, like, what are you excited to dive into with Midnight Market? This is our pilot episode. So, I hope that we have
Oh
many,
yeah, I
many
mean,
more ahead of us. So,
oh
tease
yeah,
people.
yeah, we definitely want to get other entrepreneurs on board, start,
Yes.
drilling them, trying to challenge them and nuevo kind of styles of business, because obviously the businesses are changing. There is a huge economic shift, and there's a push for this shift now with AI and the discovery of AI. I mean, it was bound to happen. AI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a teacher in high school where he said if you look at Star Trek, so funny. He's like, if you look at Star Trek's technology, literally it's being manifested to reality.
That's so funny. I
You think
mean,
about
yeah.
it. If hello, like you're opening, and they had a flip phone in Star Trek
Mhm.
original, right? And then they have like now you could just talk like this, and then you have what's it called? Then you have AI. There was AI in Star Trek,
I'll have to take
hologram.
your word for it because I'm a Star Wars fan. Haven't seen too much Star Trek, so you're
Okay,
teaching me
well,
in the
Star
moment.
Wars, I haven't seen the
But
tech. Well, I have seen tech in regards to space travel, in regards to
right, a little
rockets
bit.
based off Star Wars,
Yeah,
but as much as Star Trek because they don't have
right.
whatever they have. But he made a whole lecture about it, so I was just
That's so
repeating what he
cool.
said, and he made a
Yeah.
huge correlations with technology. How was it? Because that's when the Motorola's flip phone came out. And he
Wow.
was like, interesting how the Motorola flip phone came out. And 50 years ago, when they made the first Star Trek movie, there was the flip communication device, right? So
Wow.
he was trying like what's going on here? You see, there's a manifestation, and then as you look now, 20 years now from 2000 when he said it, 24 years, and you see there's massive manifestations of touch screens and so on and so forth of what you have in these movies are now becoming reality. So there, I think we as humans manifest the future in a sense in the movie industry or in our imagination. But I believe strongly that's only a small percentage. It doesn't mean that 98% of movies were manifesting reality. I think 98%.
I hope not, because the horror movies.
That's not manifesting a good manifestation at all. I mean, that's the reality. That's why I see.
And I have to agree with you. I think I'm most excited to dive into AI in this show because I think we'll have many episodes where we're referencing that, or just we're really focused on that for episodes. But yeah, I think that's a wrap for our pilot episode here. So I hope everybody enjoyed.
One last plugin, iShook.ai. Look it up. We have a lot of AI tools over there that everyone can use. Just go on it. And there's I think a free trial version, but iShook.ai. I mean that's our
Amazing.
AI platform that everyone can use.
I will use it to prep for our future podcasts.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Just I give you creds on it. Since you're free
sweet.
Creds.
I was hoping that would happen. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. All right, go ahead. All right. So,
but yeah, if everybody can rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening and watching this, especially where we are broadcasting this live, comment, share it. We really want to be able to interact with you. Send us questions. So we'll have lots of information in the show notes for this episode. But thank you, Benny, for, being the first guest / co-host. So this is kind of a fun way to start the show. Again, I'm Keira Dineen, CEO of DNA Today, and I am very excited for the future of this show.
Awesome. Have a good